Well, hello, friends. I am Trisha Goyer, and I'm so excited to have you here on Avid Readers of Christian Fiction. We have people already jumping in and leaving their comments for us, so it's awesome. I am here with Ashley Bustamante, and we are talking about her brand new book, Vivid, which is her first fiction novel, her first release, and I just got it in the mail today, so I'm super excited. I have been reading it on EPUB, but I'm so excited. So Ashley, welcome.
Yay, thank you so much for having me on. So
Yeah,
excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you, and just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Ashley, and I spent most of my life living in the desert. I was born in Arizona and was there for up until just a few months ago. We moved to the Midwest, so that's been a little bit of a change. Not used to the weather here, and not used to having like actual seasons.
Yes.
But so that's been a kind of a fun adventure. So we are here with got my husband and our 3 kiddos, and just kind of getting used to this new exciting change. And
That's amazing. Just in the last couple months,
yeah,
you've moved. So in the last couple months, you've moved. Your first book is launching. It's like let's just throw everything
do it all at once.
at once. I love it. Well, first of all, this cover is so beautiful. They did such
Thank
an
you.
amazing job. But why don't
They
you
really
tell us
did.
a little bit about the story?
So this story takes place on a magical continent called Magus, which is in the area that we currently know as where the Bermuda Triangle is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the premise, is that this continent formed there and people have the ability to use magic. And the source of magic for these people is colors. So there are 3 magic types, and they can use colors to power kind of their magical abilities. And 3 types are augmenters, which use kind of powers of the body, and that's red magic. Shapers use powers to manipulate objects, and that is blue magic. And the last one are mentalists. They use powers of the mind, and that's yellow magic. And the story here is that yellow magic is actually forbidden. And because colors are a power source, that means that yellow is banned in its entirety.
Yeah, like
And
eggs. Like I'm reading and like the yellow. I'm picturing the yellow taking out of scrambled eggs, and she
yep.
describes it as just a gray mass. And I'm like, that sounds horrible.
That doesn't sound appetizing. So this story explores Ava Locke. She is a 17-year-old student at Prism, which is the main magical academy in this world. And she gets kind of tangled up in these mysteries of yellow magic, and this explores what happens as she goes down that path.
Because this person, this mentalist named Elm, is wanted, and then I don't want to give too much away. It's like I'm trying to remember at the beginning, so we don't get to. She sees him. We'll just put it that way. She sees him, and supposedly she's not supposed to be able to see him, and then the adventures go on from there, with her getting kind of caught up in this yellow magic, and it's so fascinating. It's kind of I mean, just picture like this high school with these teens, but they have powers.
Yeah.
They have color powers, and so it's like I don't know. It's like a hip high school. All the drama you picture at a high school, and then she's been there since she's 5, and so she's the head student. I mean, there's all this drama, but then there's like these magical elements. So I would just love to hear like how you got the idea, because it's so fascinating. It just fascinates me when people come up with ideas. I'm like, how did she even come up with this? It's so different and unique and interesting that you just want to keep reading to find out what's going on.
Oh, well, thank you. So it feels a little bit like cheating because the initial idea actually came from a dream. So I guess it was still in there, but but it was one particular scene, and it was kind of like I was watching it from Ava's perspective, only like a movie. And I woke up and I just couldn't forget about it. Like I could feel like all her super conflicted emotions and everything that was going on. And I'm like, I need to know the rest of this story. And it just wouldn't go away. And I wrote down that one scene, and then it kind of just kept growing from there. And the color magic was something that I've imagined and daydreamed about ever since I was a kid, and it tied in so easily with the rest. And
oh, that's cool to know. So it's something that's been in your mind.
Yeah.
And then finally you get to the point where like your dream's like, okay, here we go. Let's do this thing.
And I'm like, okay, perfect.
Yeah. So so this is your debut novel, which is super exciting. Is this the first book that you've worked on, or has there been other things that you have worked on?
I've done a little bit of picture book work. In 2012, I had a picture book published, which was A Lamb and a Llama. And then my work with Arizona State University, we worked on a few social curriculum initiatives where I worked on picture books for that as well.
Okay, so you've done picture books, and then
Yeah.
this is your first novel, and you get your first novel published. Okay, this never happens, people. Let me just tell you right now.
I don't take that for granted. For sure.
Maybe I know. Maybe Kara Putman might be the only one. I'll have to ask Kara to confirm that. I think you two are the only ones I've ever met. If someone knows someone else, let me know. But usually, because I know I do. Most people I interview have like they've worked on this and it didn't work, and they worked on this other thing and then it didn't work, and that's so amazing that your very first novel. So how long was the process of you from getting the dream and getting the idea to having the finished novel?
So that's what I was just going to say, was that it didn't happen just like that.
Overnight. There.
So the first draft was actually written in 2014. So it's been quite a long road. And I did what a lot of writers did and got excited, like, hey, I wrote a book, and then started submitting it way too early, and it wasn't ready. And so then I got more serious about it, started taking some classes and going to conferences and all of that fun stuff, finding writing groups and beta readers, and really putting the work in to make this happen. And
well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah. No, it wasn't just like I wrote it, here you go, publish it. It was hard work, and it took time to get there.
So what are some of the things that you learned on your writing journey? You mentioned like you started going to conferences, because I think you don't realize how much different elements there are in fiction until you start working on it. Like there's characters and plots and themes and story arcs and friends and foes and mentor characters.
There really is. There's so much you don't even realize and think about. Like I'm an English major, so I feel confident that I can construct a pretty good sentence. I can write a paper. But there's more to writing a story than just the mechanics of it. And I remember the first writing conference I went to, I'm sitting in some of those workshops, and they're saying, yeah, I was reading this book and they did this, ha 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 ha. And I'm like, oh, I did that. There's all these little things that you don't realize are kind of bad writing tropes. And for some reason, all new writers do them.
It's so true, because it's like just the natural thing. I remember my first conference. It was 1993 at Mount Hermon. And I remember I'd written like 3 chapters, and then I submitted at a conference, which I'm like looking back now of this idea. I don't even know if I had the whole plot figured out, but this sweet person, I can't even remember who it was, sat down, and they're like, you use a lot of was. You need to make strong verbs. And I just remember like, this is amazing. Like this person's explaining what to do. But I think there's so many like weak verbs and a lot of narrative and telling too much backstory at the beginning. There's so many things that are common, because when we first sit down to write, even though we've read a lot, those are like the things that, they need to know this, or this needs to happen. And so I think it's so different when you actually start learning about fiction. You're like, oh, okay, I see why it's important to do it different ways.
It's learning different ways to deliver that information, to tell the story. And and I think you can never learn too much. Like every workshop or class I've attended, I learned something new.
Absolutely. And I attend some. I go to I did just brainstorming with Susan May Warren, and the way she brainstorms and plots her books, I was like taking notes furiously because I was like, wow, this is amazing the way she just sets stuff up. And so I think not that I'm always going to just be able to copy exactly what she does,
Right.
because no author does, but it's like you always are learning something and learning new
Yep.
tricks of the trade. And I think that's what's so amazing. And so when you got in there with the writing community, I would love to hear, like, what about the writing community?
The writing community is essential.
Yeah.
Like, I think this kind of job, if you're going into this as a career, you really need a strong community for various reasons. Have people to bounce ideas off of, people to learn from, and people for support, because you're going to need it so much. You're going to get rejection after rejection after rejection in this industry that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And it really helps to have other writers who get it, because writers are we're a weird bunch.
So true.
And people who aren't necessarily involved in that, they don't always understand. You can be like, yeah, my manuscript was rejected, and they're like, oh, okay, sorry. And
Yeah. I don't know what that means, but yeah.
But so yeah, it's really makes a huge difference. And having people, like my earlier drafts, I had so many things that my beta readers caught that I just didn't think about. Like, everyone's got a different brain, and everyone will notice different things.
I love that. So tell me about the process of going. You said 2014 you started writing this. What was the process like leading up to it actually getting published?
So I had a long road of kind of almosts with this book. Starting, I would say, because I did a lot of work on it for probably about 3 years, and then it was getting closer, and I started getting more interest when I was submitting it. And it went through the acquisitions process with multiple publishers, and it just fell through for one reason or another. Sometimes it was just bad luck. Like one editor, the publisher, they had someone unexpectedly quit, and they had to cut down, and they said, we were going to, but now we can't.
Oh, you don't want to hear that. You're like, no.
Yeah. So things like that. But I think what really was the big turning point for it was I hired a developmental editor. And because I knew there was just something that wasn't quite working, and she took a look at it and gave me lots of great feedback. But the biggest one was, she said, I cannot stand your protagonist. And I went, oh, so many people have read this and nobody has said that. And she said that she was coldly ambitious, because she's an ambitious character, but she also needs to be likable and have something to relate to at the beginning. And so as I went back and read it with those new eyes on, I went, oh my gosh, she is really unlikable.
Yeah.
And no one would like her, and no one would care what happens to her. So I rewrote it kind of through that lens, and then suddenly all the interest was there, and sent it to Enclave, and was waiting on a couple other publishers. But I had really high hopes for Enclave, and it worked out. So.
Oh, good. I love that. Okay, so then this cover is amazing.
Yes,
so
I love it.
I think they just did, especially with the book and the colors and everything, they just did a fantastic job. And then also, this is the first in a series.
Yes.
So tell us about what's coming up next.
So I can't obviously give a lot of spoilers, but it is a trilogy. So there's 2 more following Vivid. And the next one is going to introduce a bigger cast of characters. This first one is a little more focused on Ava and Elm, just because of the nature of the story and the way that Ava's life has been up to this point. She's a little more isolated. But next book we'll definitely explore more, and I'm excited to introduce people to more of these characters. And
you just turned that one in?
Yes. Just submitted book 2 on the 1st. So.
Oh, wow.
So then that will go through all the fun process of the developmental edits and all that fun stuff. And
was it different this time with book 2? Because I know book 1 took so much time, and you were going over and over and over. I'm sure you didn't have the same luxury to do
Right.
that with book 2.
I did not. It was a tight deadline for this one. I'll have a little bit more breathing room for book 3, which I'm already working on.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was a different experience. So I hope it's not too much of a mess. I try to get it as clean as possible before the developmental edits happen, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I told my husband, I'm like, my worst nightmare is that they're just going to send it back and say, try again.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. And it does feel so good just knowing like someone else is going to be there and look over it and, whatever needs to be fixed up. I think that is just like, okay.
Yeah, I think working with an editor right from the outset is really, really helpful.
I love that. Okay, then you're working on book 3. So we could look forward to this. So this is the first, and then we're gonna have 2 more that are coming up. So do you have ideas for after this? Or
I have a Google Doc that's got, last I counted, over 30 ideas on it.
Wow.
There's no way I'll be able to write them all, and we'll see which one kind of speaks to me next, or it could be one that's not even on that document.
Yeah. So are all of them the same genre? Like so what genre do you call this? Like
fantasy? Young adult fantasy.
Yeah.
And most of them, I would say are in that vein. That's my favorite to write and favorite to read. So most of my ideas are going to be in that area, I think.
Yeah. So you mentioned thinking about like the color theory and all these things as you're younger. Did you think when you were younger of becoming an author? Was like that your plan since when you were little too?
Well, it was never like a set in stone plan. Like I've always been writing. Somewhere I have a box of books that I made for my parents, like just stuff that I had drawn and written, and I had so many little stories I was writing, and I was just always doing it. And it wasn't until later on that I actually sat and thought I could be an author. Like it was just a thing that I like to do. But we had an author come to our school, and I think that was the first time I really started thinking, this is a thing that people do, and I could do it someday.
That is so cool. And so then was it later after you already like were grown that you said 2014 when you started working on that?
Yep, that was the first time that it was always probably in high school when I was taking creative writing classes, I started thinking about writing books, but wishing and thinking about it are different than actually sitting down and starting to work on it. So
yeah.
I did write when I was 18. I wrote a mystery novel. It was like 30,000 words, and it was embarrassing. And I thought I was going to do something with that someday, and then I was like, no.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Someday it might see the light of day just for fun, but
yeah,
if I can get over how bad it was.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you love like young adult fantasy. I would just love to hear like some of your favorite Christian novels that you've enjoyed. That could be stuff you read recently or stuff that you have read a while ago. What are some of your favorites?
I really love anything by Sarah Ella. She's fantastic. And her Unblemished trilogy I really, really loved. And there were moments in that one that they just tug at your heart in like that wonderful way that only writing can. And
yeah,
I love those. And got to actually read an art copy of her The Wonderland Trials that's coming out soon, and that one's a lot of fun. So looking forward to that one being.
Didn't she endorse your book too?
She did.
I did. I see it in here. Very cool. I know. I noticed that when I opened this up today. Like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So there's that one. And more recently, and she also endorsed my book, Candace. I hope I don't butcher her name. Candace Pedraza Yamnitz, I believe, is how you say it. Her Unbetrothed was a really fun one too. And she has such a lush storytelling style. Like I really admire her descriptive writing. Reading it, I'm like, wow, she's really good at making you feel like you're just there. And
yeah, and she compared this to She says, Vivid felt like reading a fresh new take on a dystopian society, something akin to the Story Peddler's magic. And I just read The Story Peddler this year, so I'm like, oh yeah, I can see
I
that.
actually haven't read that one yet, but
I like that description.
it's on my list, so
Yeah,
I've heard really good things about that one too.
yeah, that's really good. What was it like when you send these out, like for endorsements, and these people that you respect and love your work all of a sudden are endorsing your book too?
It's weird. It's wonderful, but it's weird because, you know, these people who have this wonderful writing that I admire, see them say that about something that I wrote is, yeah, it's exciting. And like someone the other day, they're like, you just have to remember that you are an author too. and,
Yeah.
And people will say those things about your work too. And I'm like, I know, but it's still weird.
Yeah. So when does, I just have a copy
grateful.
Today. When does this officially release?
May 17th.
May 7th. So
Yeah,
just
so
6 days away.
Yep.
Yep. So go pre-order it. It always helps the author when you do those pre-orders. It helps it to get, you know, that's where you get the #1 rankings on Amazon and all those good things that help retailers know, like, this is a good book and that we want to stock more of it.
Which Vivid is currently #1 in its category for based on pre-orders. So I was really excited with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it like going to Amazon and like putting your name in and like something really pops up?
It's still strange to get used to. Like there was something I looked for unrelated the other day, looking for another book, and then it pops up. You might also like. I'm like, hey, that's me.
Yeah, maybe I will like that because I wrote that book. Oh, I love that so much.
It's been fun.
So what would encouragement, because we have a lot of people that read books and that think like, maybe someday I would like to write a book, or they have these ideas, or maybe they had an idea that this kind of been in the back of their mind for a while, but they thought, oh, I can't do that. So what encouragement would you have for someone who is thinking about writing a book, but they just question if it's something that they'll be able to do?
So I truly think that anybody who is willing to put in the work could do this. And you just have to understand that it's not always going to be easy. There's parts of writing that you love and that you could do day in and day out. And then there's going to be days where you're struggling through a chapter and you're going, why did I think
this would be a fun way to spend my life?
Which is kind of basically true about just about anything, I think.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing is just to sit down and ask yourself, what do I want out of this? Why do I want to do this? And you can start kind of planning your goals based on that. And then just you do the work and it will happen.
Yeah. And I know, like we mentioned, this is young adult fantasy. And what I love about Enclave is that they put out really good books that you know that you can pass over to a young adult. Like I've been in the library and my daughters have come up. I have 4 teenage girls and then an 11-year-old boy. And they'll come up with books they want to check out and I'll just like barely open them. Just do a random thing. I'm like, nope, not this one. Not this one. And it's just so much junk.
I love that about Enclave because basically any of their books you could recommend to someone without worrying that you're going to have to cover your face in shame when they get to that one part. You don't have. There are no those parts.
Yeah, and that's what I love too. That I know that my 12-year-old or my 14-year-old or my 17-year-old, my 19-year-old, I can just hand them these books. Usually they have to wait till after I read them. But but if I didn't get a chance to read it first, I know because it's Enclave that I can hand them the book. So why was that personally important to you to be part of a publisher that is like their standard?
For one thing, because that's the kind of books I want to write. I want to be able to write books that people can enjoy as a whole family. Like, and I remember growing up on car rides, we'd get books on tape and we would listen to them. And that was always a really fun experience. But every now and then you'd get to something where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm listening to this with my parents in the car. And this is the most awkward thing in the world.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to write that. So I want books that people can read together and enjoy together and talk about freely. And I I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure on authors to write about subjects that maybe they don't want to write about. And so finding a publisher that shared my viewpoints on that I knew wasn't going to tell me you need to write more of this that I didn't want to include, that's a big relief to not have to worry about that.
Yeah, and I think we both heard from secular publishers, they'll just say, okay, I want you to add this, and I want you to add that, and then the author has the choice. How bad do I want this publishing contract? And I mean, personally, I don't want it that bad. Like, I don't want to.
I've heard of several authors who were with big 5 houses that are actually moving to smaller presses for that very reason. And
yeah. And I love, because I speak at a lot of homeschool conferences, and, you know, I write World War II and Amish romance and contemporary, and I can tell a homeschool parent anything here your 12-year-old could read. Like, there's going to be war, like there's Holocaust stuff, whatever. But I think it's so important that we can do that. And I know definitely with Vivid, like, you know, you're like, probably, do you think like 11 or 12 and up would be a good?
I would say, yeah. Like the official age, it says, I think is 13 to 18, but I think a couple years younger is fine.
Yeah, even if those really, I mean, I haven't read, I'm not done all the way yet, but I haven't read anything that would be like, oh, I don't want my little 10-year-old or 11-year-old grandchild to like.
There are some intense moments later, but nothing that's like overly graphic or.
Yeah, and there's intense television shows. There's like all kinds.
I would say probably nothing worse than Harry Potter. Like,
right. Yeah. Very cool. Okay, so Ashley, let everyone know if they want to connect with you online, if they want to find out more information about you and Vivid, where can they go to get more information?
Sure. First stop is just my website, is just www.ashleybustamante.com. Twitter, I'm pretty active over on Twitter, and I love to meet people over there. It's just at author Ashley Bustamante. Did I say Twitter? Instagram is what. Oh yeah. Although I believe it's the same handle on Twitter.
I'm not as active on Twitter because I just kind of let Twitter go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I haven't really been super active on Twitter lately, but Instagram, you can find me over there. And through the website, you can find all my social links too. And I've got a Facebook page you can join there, Page Turners. And so anyone who wants to come over and chat, I love to visit with people.
I love that so much. And so Pam says, I love Instagram. Yes, Pam.
Me too. I love all the beautiful Bookstagram photos.
Absolutely, yeah. And then if you don't remember how to spell her last name, just go to Amazon and put Ashley and Vivid.
It'll pop up.
And it'll pop up. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to finish the book. And I can't wait. 2 more coming, so I'm excited about that too.
Yep. I just saw your comment, Pam. Thank you. I love the cover too.
Yeah, I'll put her. There it goes. Oh, it didn't show all the way. It says what she said. It's not showing all the way. Is your cover is gorgeous. But yeah, I agree too. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you, Trisha. I appreciate it. It was fun.